This thing is going. It's going live. Hello, world, and everybody here. Hope you're doing well. Hope you can hear us. Hope you can see us. But I guess it's more important just to be able to hear us. So Thank you so much for being here. Again, it's an awesome Wednesday evening. Why? Because we get to hang out, and that's the cool thing. So looking forward to having a nice conversation today about fish tanks. We're going to have a conversation about fish tanks and our favorite sizes, how we decide, and really, I think what it comes down to are what I think are some of the most useful sizes. Now, we have to have some disclaimers here when we get into the whole fish tank conversation, I think.
Sure.
Because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
No.
Right? I'm just kind of going through the tanks that I think can be very versatile. We're going to go from small to large. And we did a video about this, by the way. And that video is linked in the description below, along with the video we just did about bettas and betta fish tanks. And so some of this is going to depend on your personal preferences and needs. But it's really geared towards people who might be venturing and thinking about, you know what, I've got a certain size tank and maybe I want to go a little bit larger. Or maybe someone's like, yeah, you know what, I'm not really used to this whole fish keeping thing. I started with a goldfish I won at a carnival and I put it in a 5-gallon tank and I didn't know any better, and now I want more. I need more. I'm an addict. Multiple tank syndrome is setting in.
Do they still do goldfish at carnivals? I don't think so.
I have no idea. It's actually not really a good thing, I suppose. I mean, it gets people into fish keeping, but I'm not really sure that's a great thing to be doing for the fish itself. But anyway, you get the point.
Yeah.
Right? And the point is, we're going to talk about some cool tanks. We're going to talk about why they're more valuable. And I think what I want to do in this video is I want to talk more about the different size tanks in a little bit more detail. And we can have more of a conversation about it than just doing a video where it's like, here's the tanks and here's 5 things why they're cool. And talk a little bit about other popular size tanks and why maybe we don't have as many, or why we wouldn't choose them at the top of our list, knowing, like I said, that some of these tanks are pretty cool. All right. So before we get into that, of course, we've got a few announcements as we do every week. One, seriously, very big thank you to all the people. We made the announcement last Wednesday about the merch. You know, I've been wearing this shirt for a week. You know, I do change my clothes. It's just, I like the shirt, so I wanted to wear it. So the new merch is out. You're not wearing the shirt.
I came from work.
You can. So what? You can't wear that shirt to work?
I know. I'd love to.
So anyway, thank you. Thank you very much for all the orders that came in this past week. It's really cool to see. Really appreciate it. That's been cool. The other thing is your video came out today. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, yes, we have Primetime Aquatics. Obviously, you know that because you're here. But the other thing is you've got your channel, The Small Scape, on YouTube. And you take things in a different direction sometimes. And you have your own way of explaining things. But I really love the video you did today.
I do.
She has her own way of explaining things, and they're almost always wrong.
I have
so if you want to get some really bad advice, go to her channel. I'm kidding.
Small advice. I'll give you a lot of small advice.
But you did a cool video because I liked the way it was basically, what was the title of the video?
I don't know, because whenever I give him the title, it frequently morphs into a different title.
I change it and then I forget what it is. But it's something like great ways to save money in the fish keeping hobby using gardening supplies. Now, some of this stuff we've talked about before in different videos, but we talked about them kind of individually. So if you missed, I don't know, 3 or 4 of those videos, you wouldn't have the whole list, and you went through 10. And these are great ways to save money in the hobby. So definitely after the live stream, don't leave us, because this is our fish family time here. But I thought it was a really useful, very good video. And I actually picked up one thing that I didn't realize. You kind of surprised me on one of them. Like, oh my gosh, that really does save a lot of money. We need to do more of that.
Really?
I did. But I'm not going to reveal that because it's a surprise. What else? Friday, I am going to be doing a product review on something that is actually a very popular product, and it's more of a long-term review. So we've had some products in the fish room now, and what I like to do with product reviews is I usually will do an unboxing and say, okay, here's my initial thoughts. Here's why this might be cool. Here's why some things you might want to look out for. And then I wait at least a year. And so my long-term reviews, I wait at least a year. This one has been probably closer to a year and a half, because long-term reviews, you should have some experience with the thing. And so we waited a while, and I'm going to give you some insights into this product that we've been running for a while. So that's kind of the story there. Tesla, thank you so much. Love your videos. What's your favorite heater for a 125? I actually did a video, and we'll get into the fish tank thing here in a second. I actually did a video on my favorite heaters, and I generally went with the Eheim heaters in our fish room when we used to heat the tanks and not the room. And at least for me, we've had some really good results with them. Now, I know that there are some people like, oh, you know what, I had a Eheim heater and maybe it didn't last as long as they had hoped. But for us, I have not yet had one of those Eheim heaters go out. And now we've been running them in some of our tanks. We don't run them in all of our tanks anymore, but in some of them, we've been running them now for a number of years. And I haven't yet to have one go down on me. So they've been pretty reliable. So that's 125s. You're looking at maybe like a couple 300 watters, one on each 300 watt heaters, one on each side would probably be a pretty good thing. When it comes to heaters, if you can plug them both into a thermostat that is separate from the heaters, and then that thing turns both the heaters on and off at the same time, that's the really awesome way to go. All right.
Score.
And we will answer lots more questions as we go through this whole thing. All right, so fish tank sizes. That's why you're here. Let's talk about it. There are lots of options, right? And so I wanted to take some time to talk about it because, like I said, for those of you who are kind of thinking about changing or adding fish tanks, or maybe you are a little bit newer, or maybe you got one of the gateway fish like a betta, and now you're like, I really like this. I want to look at other things too. There are certain fish tank sizes where we're going to consider a lot of things. I want to consider not just the size and how cool it can be for the fish, but let's also consider the price, because that's a big part of it. Not everybody's got endless amounts of money to spend on fish tanks. So we'll look at the price, we'll look at the convenience, we'll look at the maintenance aspects. Of course, we're going to look at stocking options. We'll go over the sizes, but that's kind of what I'm using to base our list on. And so I think, and part of this is like, okay, I get asked this all the time. If I could only have one fish tank size in our fish room, or maybe just a few fish tank sizes in our fish room, what would those sizes be? And that's kind of my thought process behind the thing. And I know you, being on the smaller side of the small scape, you're going to have a different opinion. So we'll talk about that here shortly. So I'm assuming that for you would have what would be your favorite smaller tank? Let's just start there. Like, do you have one that's like, I really like this tank? That's relatively common. It's not something like, oh, I love this size, but nobody can find the thing.
Well, I love bookshelf tanks, and I think that you can relatively find them. But I have to say, I really like the glow tank.
That tank itself.
The tank itself.
But that's like a 3-gallon.
It comes in a 5-gallon.
Okay, so it's a 5-gallon.
It comes in different ones.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like it. And then the one in the kitchen.
The one in the kitchen is the Aquatop 5-gallon. I think they call it the bullet-shaped tank, which is, it's pretty cool. It's got an all-in-one heater. So the nice thing about some of those tanks, those 5-gallon setups, is you often get most of what you need. And so what's cool about them is they have that kind of seamless sort of internal filter. I said heater, I meant filter.
I knew what you meant.
So just to be clear, it's got stuff. It's got the internal filter. It's kind of like a wall, and usually it sucks water in through maybe the bottom of one side, and then it kind of circulates through all the filter floss and biomedia, and then it comes out a return at the top on the other side. That's what this thing does. But you get that. You get a light. If you wanted to put a heater in there, there's space in the back side, so you can put the heater in. So it really makes for a seamless looking tank, which is kind of cool. Now for me, I guess the good side to that is it's a 5-gallon. So we just talked about bettas the other day, and that would be a pretty good size for a betta. But other than that, you're kind of limited, right?
And I mean, in regards to tanks, I have a really weird thing that I really have to have on a tank for me to love it and give it 5 stars. It has to have feet. Otherwise, you can't clean underneath. And then when you drip water, it's like you just know there's water there, and it just drives me nuts. Keep that in mind.
Okay.
Feet.
It doesn't drive me nuts. I don't really care. But anyway, beyond that, I think now for the fish room for me, I think one of the smaller tanks that's really good, especially for a beginner or for people who don't want to spend a lot of money, I think you start with a common 10-gallon. And the reason why I say that, I know the 10-gallon tank is often overlooked. It's like, it's a 10-gallon. But think about it for a second. A 10-gallon, you could go to one of the big box stores and you can sometimes find those things on sale for like 35 or 40 bucks. You get the tank, you get the lid. It's not going to be a great lid. It's going to be cheap plastic. You're going to get an LED that's usually kind of connected to the lid. You're going to get some kind of a filter and possibly a heater. Is the equipment with this thing going to be super high quality? Probably not. Is it going to get you through if you're just like, especially if you're newer to the hobby, is it going to get you through for like a year? Yeah, it's probably, the equipment and everything will probably stay together for at least a year until you can figure out, do I really like this? Do I want to upgrade the equipment? Do I want to upgrade the tank? And I often say when it comes to beginners, usually the sweet spot where it's like, all right, you don't want to spend a lot of money necessarily at the beginning, but you want something where it's going to be enjoyable, where you've got enough volume so that you can actually keep some fish, right? And I think the 10-gallon gives you some options, right? So maybe you keep some smaller rasboras or some pygmy cories, and maybe you've got that centerpiece honey gourami or even the betta, right? Maybe you've got some otocinclus in there, or maybe a mystery snail or something. So the 10-gallon gives you a little bit of flexibility. And think about it. The cool thing is you can put that thing just about anywhere. You got a sturdy piece of furniture, you can put it there. And it's not going to be like an overwhelming issue, right? Which is, I think that's pretty cool as well. So easy to maintain. I mean, if you had to go like old school, I've got some cups and I've got to scoop it in there and toss it in the sink. And then I've got my cup and I'm going to fill it back in. You can still do a 25% water change in a few minutes, right? Sure. So easy to maintain. It's cheap. You've got some stocking options, right? It's not like, I mean, you mentioned the 5-gallon, which is cool, but at the same time, it's like
you're limited.
It's like, I got a betta and
I got a betta,
or I got a honey gourami in there and not much else. Which I mean, yeah, I mean, you can, if you've got some specialty fish, you might like the Hetereandra formosa, you could put more in there. But I like the 10-gallon. It's a good starting point. By the way, size of a 10-gallon, you're looking at around like 20 inches, and I think it's 20 inches by 10.5 inches wide. And then I think it's about 12.5 inches tall. So it's a nice compact size. You're still...
Like what, 100 pounds?
Yeah, 100 pounds. So you're kind of borderline nano-ish. And that can be a good start. So for us, we've got like, I want to say 12 or 15 10-gallon tanks in the fish room up and running right now. And that's because they have a purpose. And if you need a quarantine tank, that can be good too. So if you outgrow it, don't get rid of it. Don't get rid of it. Because eventually... You're going to get these larger tanks. You're like, okay, I'm going to keep this 10-gallon up so when I get new fish, I can put the fish in there in quarantine and everything is great. Wow, look at that. We got a super chat. So Shane, thank you so much. Liked your videos before after you started the aquarium science series. I love them. Waiting for the next one. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, that is going to be something as we go through 2021. I really want to move towards more of that. I've got some really cool ideas. Of course, now these videos... they take a little bit more thought and a little bit more planning. And so obviously the science series means I've got to find the research that backs up what I want to talk about. And not only that, I have to find the research that's publicly available. Like I've got access to journals and things, but then the problem is I can't necessarily show those things on YouTube without getting some kind of a copyright strike or something. So I want to make sure that what I'm presenting is something that can be shared with the public and then also is useful and helps us in the aquarium hobby. So it takes me a little bit longer to get those together, but it's awesome. Lamb, thank you so much for the super chat. Love the content, especially the small scape. Love the betta content and content about planted tanks. Thanks for all your education. Well, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Glad you like it. Mary Page, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you, Jason and Joanna, for this awesome content. P.S. Clint rocks. I agree. I agree.
Our moderators
they're awesome.
Awesome.
All right, next one. So we talked about the 10-gallon, right?
Yeah.
If I had to pick a second tank, if I wanted to go a little bit larger, I think the next logical thing to do would be like, all right, I tried the 10-gallon.
12 long.
I'm going to go more bigger.
12 long.
12 long is not it. Because you can't find those anymore.
I know.
We'll talk about the specialty sizes in a minute because they're really cool. But this is kind of similar to a 12 long. Very similar, in fact.
I know.
Because it's got the word long in it.
20 long.
The 20 long. I love that tank. And for those of you if you've never tried a 20 long,
do it.
I'm a 20 long pusher. Try it.
Yeah,
you got to
I know.
try this.
I've got 2.
Yeah, and because they're awesome.
They are.
So a lot of people, they look at the 20 gallons. Now they got the standard 20, right? The standard 20 it's 24 inches long and it's like 12 and a half inches wide. I don't remember how tall it is, but it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 inches tall. That's a cool tank too. So please understand, if you've got a standard 20, I have 4 of them. Is that true? Or 5? No, 5. Sorry, I have 5 of them. So it's not like I don't like them. It's not like I'm anti-standard 20-gallon tank. So if you've got those can be good. But if it were something where I was just going to start from scratch, and I need some 20-gallon tanks, I prefer the 20 long because instead of being 24 inches long like the standard 20, it's 30 inches. And it doesn't seem like that extra 6 inches of length is going to matter until you start looking at your stocking options. And then it's like, wow, you know what? I'm going to have an easier time maybe keeping some of those smaller cichlids. So for those of you who are like, you know what? I think I want to try cichlids someday, or at least give yourself the option. All of a sudden, it's like, man, I can put rams in this thing and crebensis and apistos. And it's not like you can't do that in a standard 20. But again, that 30-inch long tank really makes a difference. And not only that, you've got 12 and a half inches wide. And then it's a shorter tank, so it's easier to work on. So it's somewhere in the neighborhood, I think, of like 12 and a half, 13 inches tall. Pretty cool.
I got distracted by a comment.
You did? Okay.
I am jelly because I think I saw one at Petco, very similar. Fin Wiggles. If you love the look of a cube, I've got the 20-gallon water box cube and love it. It's like 18 by 18. Yeah, that was like
That's cool.
bad boy that I saw.
Yep.
I'm so jealous. I want one. It was like a monster cube. I consider like 20s like monster tanks.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome. So 20 long. Why? Not only do you get the length, it's still easy to work on, right? It's not very tall. It's pretty much the same height as a 10-gallon, but you're getting that, compared to a 10-gallon, you're getting an extra 10 inches wide. So that's pretty cool. The other nice thing is you've got the stocking options now. Now you're getting into, okay, I can do more schooling fish. And so that might be a little bit tough in a 10-gallon, but it's like, hey, you know what? I want some different types of rasboras. I want some neons. I want some cardinal tetras. 10 neons or cardinal tetras in a 20 long looks pretty cool. Where they might look a little bit cramped in a 10-gallon, even though it's fine. But in a 20 long, you get that extra space. They get to spread out a little bit. Like I already said, it's a really great tank for breeding. There are some downsides. Obviously, with a 30-inch long tank, can you still put it on some furniture? Yeah, but now you're looking at 200 pounds. So it's like, okay, if you've got a really sturdy dresser or something like that, that might work, but you'd really want to make sure that the furniture that you're going to place this thing upon it's like legit, like old school, like, yeah, this is pretty good. If you're buying the stuff where you kind of put it together yourself, you got those little self-tightening screw things. You're like, all right, let me go ahead. It's still kind of wobbly. And you're like, I think it'll be okay. And then you put that 20 long on, fill it up with water. Like, turns out that wasn't okay.
No, you go to the consignment shop and get yourself some old school furniture.
Yeah.
Get some 5 friends to haul it in.
You'll have this
You're
awesome
good.
tank and the ugliest dresser anyone has ever seen in their lives. It's like, dude, how many shades of different colors brown is that dresser? It's like, hey, man, I think it was built in the 70s, and I know it looks like a Viking dresser, but it's holding up that tank just fine. It only weighed like 500 pounds getting it in here. So collapses the floor between the dresser and the tank. You're like, didn't realize I put like 1,000 pounds on there and that didn't work. Now it's all in the basement down there somewhere in pieces. But anyway, so with a 20 long, sometimes you might want to start thinking about a stand. The other issue is they usually don't come in full kits like the standard 20s. So if you wanted a standard 20-gallon tank, you could be like, okay, I'm going to go run out to Petco's PetSmart, and maybe you're spending less than $100 for the kit. And again, you're getting the heater, the filter, the lights, and all that stuff. Where 20 long, it's like, at least I haven't seen, maybe some of you can pipe up in the chat if you've ever seen a legit, full-on 20-gallon long kit that comes with everything. I just haven't seen it, so maybe it comes with the lid, but usually you have to buy all the stuff separate, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because I guess the cool part of that is, guess what? Now you might have higher quality equipment, because you can go and pick like, okay, I want this hang-on back filter, which is going to be cool, and this light, and this type of heater, and it's not kit stuff, so it might last a little bit longer. But again, the downside is you've got the weight issue, a little bit obviously more maintenance than a 10 gallon, but it's still not out of control. It's not out of control. Now, let's say you're like, you know what? 20 long's pretty cool. I like it. I like what you're cooking there, but I want something much bigger.
Shocker.
If it were me in my fish room, like if I had to just I'm thinking if I could just keep a few tanks. All right, so I'd have some 10s. For me, the 10s would be all about grow out. They'd be about quarantine. They would, I'd stack them up the way I do. The 20 longs are like, all right, I can actually make a little bit of display out of this because I've got some extra space, which is cool. If I want something more, between a 20 and the next highest tank, you got the 29. But to me, the 20 long and the 29, because they have the same footprint, they're not hugely different unless you've got some specific fish where you're like, you know what? I want to create levels. Levels, Jerry. I want levels. So maybe you want some fish that are more at the top. You're like, I can't necessarily do that with a 20 long. But for me, I usually skip the 29s. I only have 2 of them in our fish room. I generally go with the 40 breeders. If you've never had a 40 breeder, that's a cool tank. Don't you agree?
Oh, yeah.
And it's fun to scape, right?
Yeah, way better than if you mention another one. We won't mention that one, but yeah.
We'll get there. We'll get to the other one that you don't like to scape here in a second.
One.
But the 40 breeder is cool because now you're getting a 3-foot tank, and there's just something about it, the dimensions, right? And some of the stuff is personal preference. Some of you are like, you know what? I don't really like the 20 long, and I don't like you anymore for even mentioning it. I like the standard 20, and that's okay. But for me, that 40-gallon breeder is something that we've got 8 of them, I think, in the fish room. Yeah, 8. And what's cool is because they're 3 feet long, they're pretty awesome, but they're also 18.5 inches wide. And so you get this depth, which you like for the scaping stuff, right?
I do.
So you can play with that in terms of getting the depth in if you are into aquascaping. What's also cool about that is now you're really getting this surface area, right? This bottom area where you're starting to look at, okay, I can keep other types of fish. I can keep cichlids. I can do maybe some nano cichlids and keep pretty large schools of fish, which is nice. The tank itself is 17 inches tall, so it's the tallest tank that we've talked about so far. Little known fact, you want to know a secret? Some people know this. If you watched my video about fish tank sizes, the 40-gallon breeder is not 40 gallons.
No.
It's actually somewhere like 47 to 49 gallons. So the name is misleading. People are walking around being like, yeah, you know what? I got this 40-gallon breeder. I just wish it was, it just had more gallons, right? It's a gallons thing. Guess what?
You do. You
now know my 40-gallon breeder is actually quite a bit larger than I thought. Yeah, it's like, I don't remember if it's 47 or 49 gallons, but it's more. It is more. Stocking options, like I said, are awesome. But now, cost-wise, this is, I would say, and again, I'm assuming everything is new, right? Obviously, you can go on Craigslist. You can go on OfferUp. You can do all kinds of stuff, classified, online classified stuff, and be like, yeah, I found a 40-gallon breeder for $5. I found one on the street, right? You can do that. But new, the 40-gallon breeders can get expensive. A lot of people, like I know what we did, is we waited for the $1 per gallon sale.
Sure.
A lot of people ask us, hey, where do you get your tanks? And it's not like, I don't know. I sometimes wish I had a better answer, right? It's like, I feel kind of cheap or something. Like I'm supposed to have a better answer. It's like,
right.
But you're on YouTube. Don't you get like these super awesome, high quality tanks? I'm like,
well,
no, I basically bought most of the tanks came from sales, $1 per gallon sales. That was all the 10s, the 20 longs, the 40 breeders. When Petco runs those bad boys, they actually used to be $1 per gallon. That's luckily, I think almost all of them were when they were like $40. Now I think they're 50% off. So they run like $50 or $55. At least that's what they cost around us. But so the cost isn't crazy out of control. The problem is I don't recall ever seeing those as a kit either. Like maybe you'll get like glass lids with them every once in a while, but now you got to buy the light. And now here's the deal. The 10 gallon and the 20 gallon, they're very narrow tanks. So most LED lights that you get are going to have no problems illuminating the entire tank and growing plants because they're short and they're narrow. And so that light basically just comes out. And it's like, burp, and it covers the entire tank really well. Mm-hmm. With a 40 breeder, that 18.5-inch depth is a whole different story. And so now not only do you have a 17-inch deep tank, but you've got 18.5 inches wide, I should say. And so when that light shines, it's got a little bit more area that it has to cover. So you really have to think about if you're going to have a really nicely planted tank, okay, what kind of lights am I going to use? It's not like a huge deal, but it's something certainly that you have to consider, right? So the equipment's going to be a little bit more. And then here's the other thing. Once you start getting into the 3-foot tanks, you start to really wonder, okay, is one filter on one side of that tank going to be sufficient so that I have enough water flow where I'm not getting dead spots in the tank? Now, you know that I've done videos on overfiltration and how we always overfilter our tanks when it comes to biological filtration. But there's another side, and that's the mechanical side, right? And so you want to make sure that you've got enough water flow that if the fish are making little dookies on one side of the tank, that's little dookies. It makes it sound not so bad, right? Oh my gosh, I was siphoning by mouth and I got a mouthful of fish dookies. Okay, right?
You can stop using that word.
Every fish keeper. How many fish keepers have gotten a mouthful of fish mulm? If you haven't, I guess not. Maybe not in the new days. No. But in the old days, it was like you didn't have the little bulb, and most people didn't know the trick about self-starting the siphon. So it was like you get down there and you get the water started, and sometimes it's like, is it happening? Is it coming down? And all of a sudden it's like, oh, too late. That was gritty. Anyway, so I don't remember where I was going with that.
Wow.
I got distracted. It's probably because I'm a dude and that kind of stuff distracts me. I'm sorry about that. What was I saying? It's 3 feet long. And so you might want to consider maybe a couple smaller filters, like on most of our 40, not most, on some of our 40 breeders, we have a couple sponge filters, one on each side, maybe a couple smaller hang on the backs. One can often do it, especially if you put it in the middle, but just something to think about. The heaters are going to be a little bit more, your filtration is going to be a little bit larger. 40-gallon breeder, I don't know of any furniture that we have in the house where I'd be like, just put the 40 breeder on it, it should be fine. Except maybe the dresser that you have in your studio area, which, by the way, is coming soon to a theater near you.
Oh, yeah.
We're getting that very close.
Yeah, it's so he calls it the studio. I call it the shop.
Yeah, the shop, the studio. She's building it out. It's going to be cool. We'll eventually shift the live streams in there, which should be nice. But anyway.
You're going to have to rent space for me, though. Yeah.
You're most likely with a 40 breeder, you're going to want a stand, which is going to add cost, right? It might cost you $75 or $100, maybe even more, depending on the stand, so that you can keep that 40 breeder from falling over somewhere. Maintenance at this point, I think you're well past the time where like, just dip the pitcher in there because you'll be walking back and forth for a while, dripping water on your floor. So there you might want to invest in some kind of a gravel vac and a siphon and maybe even like the Python water changing system. Something similar to that might be helpful, but it's a cool tank. Now, the tank that you kind of makes you sad a little bit. Again, if you have one and you enjoy it, that's all that matters. But I know there's one, at least from the aquascaping perspective, that you like, every time I say, okay, we've got this size tank, what can you do with it? You kind of just give me that face. I get that face a lot. It's not cool.
Yeah, and I think it just could be ill-prepared scaping. I think I look at it and maybe the depth just looks different. So I get all my supplies. I'm totally stoked on a certain kind of feel, and I get down there and it doesn't fit or doesn't look right. I just find it a challenge to scape the 55-gallon.
The 55-gallon, I think that's often when people look at the 40 breeder, they're comparing, and we did a comparison between the 40 breeder and 55, but the short version is we have two of them in the fish room. Both of them came as kits. So I guess the advantage there is you've got a 4-foot tank, which there's no doubt, there's something about a 4-foot tank that makes it look larger than a shorter tank. So like, even though the 55-gallon, and we said the 40 breeder is only, 6-7 gallons difference, the 55, because it's got that really large viewing panel, looks quite a bit larger. And so usually when people move up, they're like, I had the 20, I went to the 55, like, wow, this is crazy. That's cool. If I could do it again, I think where I have my two 55s, I would, and they're much more expensive, but I would have opted to triple stack 33 longs like I did on the other wall by the 40 breeders over there. I think I would have done that instead, only because like if you look at a 33 long, they're harder to find for sure, but they're the same length. You still get 4 feet length. You still get the 12.5 inches width, But instead of being, I think that, I don't know what the 55s are, but they're over 21 inches tall. I know that. But the 33 longs are somewhere around 12 inches tall, 13 somewhere in there. Way easier to work on, and they just look cool to me. So again, part of it's a personal preference thing. So if you like the 55s, that's awesome. I tend, like I said, I probably would, if I could go back and do it again. I'm not going to. I'm not going to get rid of those 55s because they're already stuck there in the corner. But if I were rethinking it, I would have triple stacked 33s instead. So if I was going 4-foot tank, I think the 75 for me is the next logical choice. And again, that's because you've got a 4-foot long tank, but unlike the 55, you're getting that extra width. Instead of 12.5 inches now, you're getting 18.5. And there's something about that. There's just something about that extra width in that tank that really makes it look a lot larger, even though they're the same length and pretty much the same height. But now your stocking options at that point, it's like you're really in the big leagues when you've got a 75-gallon tank, because now you're looking at pretty much most, I wouldn't say most African cichlids, but a lot more African cichlids, some medium-sized South Central American cichlids, as long as they're not overly aggressive. You've got a whole bunch of aquascaping options. Right? We're going to rescape the bottom 75-gallon. I'm sure you're going to have fun with that because there's just so many options, but it's expensive. And so again, usually when you see those tanks, it's like, okay, I can get the 75. Sometimes it comes with the lids and the lights, but totally going to need a stand at that point because you got a tank that's going to weigh 750 gallons. You're going to get some sweet stocking options, like I mentioned. Maintenance is going to be considerably more than the other tanks we've talked about so far in terms of time. Because think about it. Doing stuff like gravel vacuuming, if you want to do a 25% water change on that bad boy, it's like, okay, well, that's a lot more volume. So it just takes more time. Just time to, if you've got an algae issue, to manage that. Filters, by the time I get to a tank that size, I always run 2 filters. And it's not because I'm worried about ammonia or nitrite or anything like that. It's just simply because with a 4-foot tank, once I hit the 4-foot tank, I don't care if it's a 33 long or a 75 gallon. If you run a filter even in the middle, you're going to have possibly dead spots on either end where the stuff is going to accumulate, fish stuff and everything, detritus. So I try to run either 2 sponge filters or 2 smaller hang on the backs on either side of that 75. At that point, some people consider 2 smaller heaters, 1 on each side, just because that will help kind of even out the water temperature, so you don't have cold pockets or warm pockets. It doesn't really make, it's not something I worry about a lot, but you're often, especially with a 75, you're often doubling up on the equipment, but just making it a little bit smaller. So certainly something to consider there. But the stocking options, once you get to a 75, it really opens up a lot. So you're looking at, like I've had Severums, I've had Geophagus in 75 gallons with no issues. The Hecali cichlids, which are kind of like Geophagus. What else have we had in there? Some people, I remember one time we had one of the parrot fish, not the the blood parrots. Yeah,
his name was Happy.
They were fine. Their angelfish do really well in a 75 gallon. We had a Midas cichlid pair in a 75 gallon. That was the only fish that we had in there. But those tanks really they give you endless amounts of options at that point. So most of the time you can walk into a lot of the pet stores and be like, okay, unless they've got large South and Central American cichlids, you're like, I can keep most of these fish, and which is cool. It's kind of neat to be able to know that you have that ability. Now, if I'm going over a 75, you're going 6-foot tank at that point. And I know there's 5-foot tanks. I know you've got the 5-foot 120, which is a little bit taller. I know there's the 90 gallon out there that's 4 feet. But at that point, if I'm going over a 75, I'm going at least a 125. Get that 6-foot tank. That's still 18.5 inches wide, like your 75. Now it's going to be taller. It's going to be over 23 inches tall. But now it's like, okay, now you've got most of the larger South Central American cichlids, pretty much any community fish you want. Again, you have to make sure that the fish go together, of course, but you get a ton of options with the 125. Definitely need a stand. You're going to spend some money on a 125. You're going to need larger filtration. Maybe now you're starting to look at like, okay, maybe I want a canister filter. Maybe I want to bust out and get that Fluval FX4, FX6. Maybe I'm going to run a couple larger hang on the back filters. Usually you're going to need at least 2 lights on a 6-foot tank because it's not 6-foot long lights aren't super readily available. They make them, but I don't think that they're not as common as a lot of the other lights. They end up costing a lot more. So now it's like, okay, do I get 2 3-foot lights, which is what most people do, but the cost definitely is there. I mean, you got to be committed at that point. So I think the 6-foot tank is someone who's like, okay, I've been keeping fish for a while. I love this. I'm addicted. I've got a problem. It's time to go large. Go big or go home is kind of like the philosophy there.
Yep.
But that's actually, and I mentioned this before, but that's not my favorite 6-foot tank either. It's the 180.
Yeah.
I don't have any 180s. I got 4 125s. I don't have any 180s only because
That's weird.
I'm not 100% sure it would be easy. I think so traditionally I've said I don't think it'll fit in the basement. The more I think about it, I think it might. But the last thing I want to do is have me and another dude or a couple dudes getting our stairs are the stairs that kind of go like they go down and then they have a thing and they go the opposite way, right? So I don't know what you call those kinds of stairs, but it's not a straight shot. It's one of those. You go doop 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 doop, and then you go doop 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 doop. So getting a 6-foot tank and 180 is 24 inches wide and it's about 25 inches tall. That's a large tank because stairways are generally 3 feet wide. So it's like you don't have a ton of space, right? First of all, to get the thing down. So you basically got to pick it up and just take it one step at a time down height-wise. I don't know if I'm ready for that. I think at some point I might try it, especially if I found a 180 like on sale somewhere, but that's an awesome tank. Again, 6 foot, 2 feet wide. It's 25 inches tall. At that point, you're keeping, except for the extremely large fish, you're basically like, okay, what do I want to do with this thing? Scaping is going to be amazing. Oh, yeah. Lights will be an issue if you want to plant a tank. You're going to need some strong lights with a 180 because of that 24-inch depth and the 25-inch or 24-inch width and the 25-inch depth. Crazy amounts of filtration. Maybe at that point you're looking at a sump or definitely an FX, a Fluval FX6 if you're into canisters. 2 really big hang-on back filters would work, but I'm talking about like top of the line. Like, yeah, I got 2 or 3 AquaClear 110s or Seachem Tidal 110s or 2 or 3 Marineland Pro 450s running on that bad boy. So yeah. All right, we got a bunch of super chats here we need to kind of go over. Jeremiah, thank you so much for the super chat. Hello. I have a male and female betta currently in a 5 and a 10 gallon, and I'm planning to get a 55 gallon community tank. Thoughts on housing the bettas together in a 55 gallon considering the tank size? You would think that a 55 being a 4-foot tank would be enough for those two to maybe sort of kind of get along. What will most likely happen is the male will want to mate with the female. And if that mating is successful, he's going to spend most of his time guarding the bubble nest. If that female goes anywhere near there, he's going to chase her away. If the female doesn't mate with the male, he's probably going to kill her. And even if they do mate and that female gets anywhere close to the male, he's probably still going to kill her. And so long term, it won't work, right? So if they don't mate, he's going to kill her. And if they do, it might work for a little bit. But as soon, I mean, the eggs hatch relatively quickly. And as soon as they do, he's going to be trying to wipe her out. So I probably wouldn't mix them. The female would, depending on what you want to keep in that 55, the female might be a better choice to put in there just because the long flowing fins of a male betta, even some fish that don't traditionally fin nip, you never know, especially because if you're getting a 55, you're probably going to want to have lots of different smaller fish swimming around in there. And it just takes, I got a half a dozen of whatevers, and now they're nipping at the betta. Now my male betta's got the fins of a female betta. So the female might be the better one to put in a 55. Mm-hmm. Okay, hold on. My chat thing just froze. Yep, there we go. Hold on a second here. It unfroze. Now I just want to make sure I didn't miss a bunch of stuff here. So let's see. Let me scroll up. This is such a pain. The whole thing froze. It went down like 600 feet. Yeah. Apparently because I wasn't letting multi-tank addiction. Thank you so much for the sticker. It's a poop. Yes,
Must have been on your rant.
It's a little dookie. I like it.
Stop using that word. I don't like that word.
You don't like that word?
No, I don't.
It's like, all right, so
it's from
hold on.
Video.
There was a thing in your video today, and I didn't mean to do it.
From my video?
Remember I said it when I was editing, and it's stupid. I'm going to air out some of our dirty laundry. I'm editing the video, and I kind of cringe, and she's like, what? I'm like, You said take a scissor. Remember that?
Oh, that's
and I'm like,
funny.
They're
That's
called
weird.
scissors. And you said, so I'm just curious. How many of you out there, is it a scissor or a pair of scissors? No, it's not a big deal. But I don't know why that just like, I just kind of went like, a scissor? Who says that? Probably like everybody. And I'm the one that's silly. But
I have no.
So I won't use that word again if you don't tell me it's a scissor. Because I feel like a scissor would be like 1/2 of the scissors, and then you'd just be using it as a knife.
Yeah, but would you say, I gotta pack some pants and some shirts? Or would you say, I need to pack some pairs of pants and some shirts? You wouldn't say that.
But you would say, how many pairs of pants do you have? You wouldn't say how many pants. Hey, man, how many pants you got? Nobody would say that, right? You would say, how many pairs of pants do you have? Not like, how many pants you got? That actually sounds creepy, right? How many pants you got? Like,
no,
why do you want to know, you freak? Go away. I just probably lost like 50 people on this live stream.
Oh my gosh, they're like, whoop.
Yeah, this guy's a nutcase. Ask me
glad
about how many pants I have. So to you, man. NYK, thank you so much for the super chat. Is it worth... Now we can get back to fish keeping. Thank you.
Thank goodness.
Is it worth upgrading to a 29 gallon from a 20 standard? I wish I could get a 40 gallon breeder, but my space is limited to 35 inches in length. Sad. Upgrading. So you're replacing the 20. You're going to have more stocking options. There's no doubt about that, just because you're going to go from a 20 gallon standard, which was 24 inches long, to a 29, which is 30 inches long. The 29 is going to be taller. They're the same, roughly the same width, but the 29 is going to be taller. So yeah, I think I don't know if there's necessarily anything off the top of my head within reason. I don't know if there's like, oh man, you went from a 20 to a 29. Now you can keep this fish where you couldn't keep it before. I'm not necessarily sure it comes down to something like that, but I think what happens is you're able to start using those levels a little bit more because the tank is slightly taller, and maybe keep more of the things you would normally keep in a 20 gallon. And so for instance, maybe you've got a schooling group of some type of rasbora or smaller tetra. And it's like, you know what? Now that I got the 29, I can add 3 or 4 more of those fish to my school. And maybe it's like, okay, in the 20 gallon standard, fish around the size of like a neon. I'm not saying neons in particular, but like a tetra that size. It's like, okay, I kept 10 of those in a 20 standard, and that looked pretty cool. And maybe in a 29, it's like, okay, well, I can keep a slightly larger tetra, like maybe, I don't know, a black phantom tetra, something around that size, or white skirt tetras. Now that might be those might get a little large even for a 29. But so that's kind of where you're at. So if you're looking to maybe increase the number of like types of schooling fish you have, or you want to go slightly larger on like maybe a tetra or a rasbora, that's where I think that comes in mostly. At least that's my humble opinion. Finn Wiggles, thank you so much for the #1 fan sticker.
Thanks.
The jumping little guy. Love to see the jumping little guy.
It's a little pair.
Yep.
Jumping pair.
Yeah.
So cute.
Very cool. Clint, thank you so much for this the sticker. What is that?
Oh, laughing.
It's
like
a laughing
ROFL.
dude. Uh-huh.
That's
it's a
funny.
laughing
I've never
dude.
seen that one before. That's cute.
You haven't?
I love stickers.
Well, I haven't either.
Yay.
I just wanted to play off like I did. Amir, thank you so much for the super chat. Finally got a 33 long and thinking of keeping shell dwellers in there. What species do you think would benefit most from the tank footprint? 33 long, you're open to any shell dwellers you want to keep. And it's a really, really good tank for a shell dwellers because you got the 4-foot length. They don't need the height, right? So you don't need the 55 gallon height. So if you want things that are not going to cause you headaches, so you've got the 2 biggest, most common ones are the Neolamprologus similis and the Maltese. Those are the least aggressive. Those are the ones that are going to be easiest to breed. So if you want to start out with a half a dozen and then you want to just kind of watch them fill your tank, that's pretty cool. But you could also, in a 33 long, look at, okay, maybe I want to try to do a half a dozen gold ocellatus or Neolamprologus brevis or the Meleagris. Especially the ocellatus and the Meleagris are a little bit more aggressive, but with 4 feet of space, and if you set it up correctly, maybe you got a little bit of rock work in the center, you can easily have 2 pairs of gold ocellatus breeding in a 4-foot tank without... I've never had an issue doing that. I've never had an issue in a 20 long, but some people have. Meleagris are cool. The Signatus are really cool. Again, but they tend to be a little rough on one another sometimes. But pick one that you really like, but just know that with the gold ocellatus, you still may have to keep an eye on the fry and make sure that they're doing okay and that they're surviving okay. But Similis and Maltese are going to be the least of, it'll fill the tank fastest and they won't prey on their fry. Multi-tank addiction, thank you again for the sticker. Got the, it appears to be the drooling man, which is pretty cool. Bonnie, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you both for all your great information. Always interesting. Well, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, Marty, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate it. Glad you're here. Appreciate you being here. All right, let's get into some other questions. So again, as I always say, if you've got questions, it's easiest sometimes when you put the @Primetime Aquatics because that highlights it in orange for us, and then I can see very easily. All right, so you've seen that one, huh? BW Outdoors.
Yeah.
Hey, Jason. I know you're not very familiar with native fish, but I plan on getting a 50-gallon Rubbermaid for green sunfish. Would the tall or long short version be better? Of the fish?
No, probably the...
Or the Rubbermaid?
Probably the Rubbermaid.
Because I don't know of any tall or long short version of the fish. So
no, the
long,
Rubbermaid.
I think the long is definitely going to be better, provided that it's still got, I don't know exactly what the dimensions are, but my mind always goes towards getting a longer tank rather than a taller one because fish use the horizontal swimming space more than the vertical. And especially, believe it or not, those fish, like a lot of like the bluegill and the sunfish, they're aggressive. They are definitely, they'll tear each other up.
Yeah.
Especially as they get full grown. So you just got to be careful with that. And so I would go longer rather than taller for sure. All right, let's see here. Oh, now I'm seeing the Primetime Aquatics questions come in. Hey, Jason, do you try to avoid inbreeding in your tanks? Do you mean like hybrids? It depends. So for the most part, with all my Lake Tanganyikans, yes, I would actively try to avoid that. For my peacocks, I've got a tank where it happens, and I don't generally pull the females unless I know that it's a... If I think it's going to be a cross run and get some really cool OBs with my peacocks, then I will sometimes pull those eggs. But inbreeding Tanganyikans, I definitely try to avoid hybridization. Now, inbreeding is just what happens, right? Anytime you breed fish, you're going to let that go a few generations and you're going to get inbred fish. Fish do a better job with the genetics when it comes to generational inbreeding than most other animals. Like if you try to do that with dogs or cats or mammals just in general, you'd probably have a problem very, very shortly. But with fish, I've seen some articles that say, there are some fish that can go 50 generations or more before you really start seeing serious issues. I don't know if it's necessarily that many. I just, something in my head doesn't think that can go quite that long. But inbreeding, it's just going to happen. Now, I do think that there are some fish out there that are tremendously inbred to the point where the genetics just aren't that great. And I think bettas are one of them. And I don't know if it's necessarily inbreeding or if it's just the breeders who are selling these fish, especially to some of the big, and I don't want to call it the big box stores, but it just seems like some of them, you get these bettas and within 6 months, like, what the heck happened to this thing? It would look fine, and then it just goes right downhill so quickly. Now, again, I don't want to paint them in a bad light necessarily because sometimes that's not the case, but there are some fish. I'm finding that more, and I don't know if it's a regional thing, but like with a pistogramma, which is a cool, small South American cichlid, but it just seems like every time I get a group of 6 or 8, and it could just be what's flowing around in our area, all of a sudden you start to see like spine issues, and I get them small, right? So it's not things that you can actually see easily. Like if you go to a pet store, like, oh, I'm not going to buy that one with the lumpy spine, but it just seems like there's more inbreeding going on there. And I don't think, it seems like the apistogramma have a harder time when they get a little bit too inbred. So yeah. What else? Bonnie, thank you so much for the super chat. I saw on the internet. What? You should use Tums for mystery snails for calcium.
I saw that.
Yeah, flavored, I heard good, but isn't the colorings bad?
You would think.
I don't know about the colorings. Obviously it's not natural, the coloring, so if you can stay away from... I've never actually taken a Tums. I mean, this sounds stupid,
but... always come in colors.
But do they have plain ones, like just pasty plain ones? If they do, I would opt for that. But yeah, I've lots of people. I wish Lab Snails was here because she'd be able to answer that. She is.
Isn't she here? Lab, you here?
Lab, if you're here, you can answer that question more, probably a lot more.
What's the deal?
But I think it's okay. I haven't really seen any issues. I don't use it, but yeah, I think it's fine. Brandon, I have a trio of endlers for about 2 months. Any idea as to why the females aren't having fry? Never, but still moody. Thank you so much. So look, I guess the question is, are we sure they're not? Are you sure they're not having fry? Are you sure there's not like 100 fish in there? You just don't see them. Sometimes the fish will eat the fry, and so even if they are having, they're very small, and if you don't have top cover and they're not really being well fed, like to the point where the rest of the fish are like, yeah, I don't even feel like chasing that baby around. Sometimes endlers will eat the babies. In fact, I think when I compare endlers with guppies, it seems like the endlers like to eat the babies a little bit more than the guppies, at least the endlers that we've had in our setups. That may not always be true. So that could be part of it. And then sometimes you never know. You might wind up with a fish who's got a genetic abnormality where they're not going to breed, right? So it can happen. All right, let's see here. I'm scrolling up. Joanna's telling me to scroll. Oh. Tara, thank you so much for the super chat. At Joanna.
Oh, and that's me.
I know you love the black Petco sand. I also love the look, but can you plant root feeding plants into the sand? If so, do you add root tabs?
Yes and yes.
Care to expand? She's a woman of few words. That's why we get along.
Sure. Yeah, I do it all the time with crypts. Always. Only one of my tanks has the what's this stuff called again? The I always forget the name of it. My farm.
Oh,
my farm.
Your plant farm, yeah.
Yeah, the
ADA soil, or
it's not.
No, I'm sorry, Fluval.
Fluval
aqua soil. Right?
What's the actual name of it? I always forget
the Fluval, I think it's aqua soil.
No.
Is it? I don't.
Anyways, yes. I always
stratum, Fluval stratum.
Thank
I knew it pops in. It just takes a little longer. I mean,
yeah, this is what we go through like all the time.
You should see some of our conversations. I'm starting to sound like my parents. You look at them, just shake your head and be like, those poor people. And now here we are. Mm-hmm. Our kids probably look at us like,
yeah.
I don't ever want to be like them because they're sitting there having half a conversation. They don't even know what planet they're on half the time. And they're trying to talk about things.
We understand each other.
We figure it out.
Yeah.
We figure it out. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the black sand, the inert sand is fine. Root tabs, I've never had an issue. Mm-hmm. We've got that. I don't think so, except for your little plant thing with the Fluval stratum. Mm-hmm. Maybe partly in one of your shrimp tanks. I'm trying to think. Oh,
yeah,
I've got
one from Flip.
And I've got fluorite in one of our 20 gallons. Mm-hmm. But other than that, everything is it's not like a specialty planted substrate. And if you look around our fish room, mm-hmm. you see how many planted tanks we have. Okay, so lab snails did answer the question. Hold on.
Oh wait, but this was wrapping it up.
Lab snails. I personally don't like to use Tums, but they usually don't hurt at all, and good calcium for them. The beta feeder blocks are better. Cool, thank you. Because I mean, I know you. And by the way, Lab Snails has got a very interesting video. I saw your video on how you were incubating your mystery snail eggs, and I thought that was a really interesting thing where you use the Tupperware and set it up. So if you're into breeding mystery snails, she's got a really cool video out on how to make sure the eggs stay moist for their entire time, because if they dry out, then you're not getting the mystery snails. So that was a cool video. I liked it very much. Okay.
I was just going to add for the root tabs, if you saw my video from today, just a reminder that you can make your own root tabs, because if you go and get the root tabs from PetSmart, the Seachem Flourish, something like that, you get like 10 capsules for $6, so that's 60 cents a piece. Well, you can make your own, or even buy the Osmocote Plus, which you can also use in the garden.
Yep.
You buy the little capsules and they work out to be like less than 10 cents a piece. So
yeah,
it's
less than that even.
Yeah, and just make sure that you bury them deep into the substrate, and then they should stay put, and you're all good.
Yeah, I've got a bag of Osmocote Plus that I bought years ago.
Yeah.
And it's not like I use a lot of root tabs, because the dirty little secret is, once your tank is established, and we generally don't gravel vac plant tanks where we know we have rooted plants, at least not very much. And if you're balancing and you're making sure you're feeding properly, that fish waste becomes fertilizer. And so we kind of back off on a lot of the root tabs once our tanks become established. I haven't found it to be as necessary. So yeah, you can use them still, but it's not quite as necessary, I'd say.
Yeah.
Fin wiggles. Science! I mentioned my cube 20 gallon. It took forever to balance this tank, 6+ months. Is there something more challenging about managing parameters in a cube over a rectangle?
That's a good question.
I don't necessarily think so, that there's something inherently more challenging about a rectangle. Part of it could be, I don't know what kind of lights you used on that tank, but there could be something where, again, I think you mentioned it was 18 by 18 cube. And so you've got the same issues there with that 18-inch wide tank as you would with like a 75 gallon or a 40 breeder, where if you've got like, let's say a LED strip light in the center that's got to kind of go like this, and there's not a lot of depth there either. So there could be some issues where some parts of the tank are getting more light than others. And so now you got to think about where you're putting your plants. But for the most part, I don't think we've had any particular issues with like, oh my gosh, this tank looks horrible. It's the square.
It's the square.
The square got me, man.
But for a cube tank, you know what they should have? They should have like X lights. I would make an X light. Like
X light.
Yeah, because then you get like better coverage.
Yeah.
And it would look cool.
It would look cool.
And it would sound cool.
And you could say, this is my X-Men tank light thing. Gerald, thank you so much for the super chat. I have a 55 gallon with aragonite. It was a cichlid tank. Do I have to change substrate if I want to go plant it? So here's a fun fact. I have the cichlid mix, which is very similar to the aragonite, in the 50 gallon low boy with all those mollies. And that tank is by far, I think, the best tank we have when it comes to growing Crypts, Anubias, Java Fern. You've got some sword plants in there right now that are doing a thing. And I mean, the Crypts are just going nuts.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing too is all of our tanks have the same water parameters. It's like 8.2 pH, water hardness, general hardness, and carbonate hardness are like 10 to 12 degrees, which now you're getting up to like 200 parts per million, 78 degrees. So they all generally have the same water parameters anyway. And I don't necessarily know if it's like, is that aragonite going to be as good as some of the specialty planted stuff, or like putting fluoride in your tank? Probably not. But I do know that our plants seem to have grown fine in those parameters. Are you going to want to probably put root tabs in there? Yeah. But like I said, I haven't really seen a huge difference. So take that for what it's worth. All right, let's see here. Clint says, $1 million idea on the X-Lite. That'd be a good name too, right?
Right?
Watch.
It's catchy.
Fluval or Phoenix Stingray people are going to be watching this live stream. And
you all know.
6 months from now,
you all know.
They're going to be like, brand new to the cube planted aquarium hobby, the X-Lite.
I'll just make a button and I'll be happy.
Well, you better make this button now, because you'd be like, well, see, I even had the button to prove it was my idea.
I'll take them to court. I got the button.
Well, that's great. On a live stream, you're already talking about taking businesses to court that haven't done anything. That's a great idea. That builds nice bridges. If you take my X-Lite that I'm never actually going to do anything with,
they can have it.
Yeah.
Just give me.
We're going to be very litigious. Finn Wiggles, thank you so much for the Flying Man sticker.
Oh my gosh.
Love it.
Find these.
The flying looks like a blue peach.
Oh my god. It's not a peach.
Kind of. No, I mean
it's a pear.
Pear, peach. They're all the same. It's a fruit. And not the most popular either. So
Pear?
Pear.
Oh, pears are good.
Yeah, I don't know where pears really stand on the fruit
crunchy
popularity contest.
But when you get a good pear, it's yummy.
When does they even come in season? Like, when is like a good pear? Like, yeah,
pretty soon.
I went to the store because it's pear season. I've never heard anybody say that.
I work with somebody who would totally know exactly when pear season is.
Well, maybe they would. So now watch. Everybody hears pear people like, hey, I know what pear season is. It's from May 15th to August 21st.
It wouldn't be that long.
Let's see here. Let's answer some questions. BW Outdoors. Can a Variatus platy survive in a outdoor tub through winter in Pennsylvania? It gets pretty cold, like 45 degrees. They're cooler water. I don't know if I'd push them at 45 degrees. I'd probably want to put some kind of a heater in the tank just to try to maintain at least 60s. 45 is pretty cold.
Yeah.
Right. So 45 is a lot of the more native species like you were talking about before. I'm not sure. I haven't tried it, and I wouldn't expect them to. Let me just put it that way. Chris King, thank you so much for the super chat. Sorry to go off topic. Oh, off topic, because we haven't been there already talking about pears, right?
Yeah.
But I've been wondering,
Plants.
do you have any saltwater tanks? If not, why not? How hard would it be to grow from fresh to saltwater? Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you for the super chat. No, we don't have any saltwater, and the reason for that is I am very much against saltwater. I am very much against every part of salt. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not. It's one of those things where I have to balance time, and we've already got 70 to 80 tanks up and running. That means combined throughout the week, we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of like 12 man hours. Again, I don't maintain the tanks. The boys maintain the tanks, but they've got a lot to do. I don't personally want to take the extra time for the maintenance side of things, but I really like the way I've always said, if I did do a saltwater tank, I don't know if I would be odd. It'd be gobies. So I'd probably have to find a relatively shallow tank and just do a bunch of And I don't even know if that's like a thing. Like, can you do that in a saltwater tank where you just like, yeah, I got a goby tank. It'd be one of those things where like the saltwater people are like, you did what? That's like keeping gouramis together. They're all going to kill each other. Like, and it's not cheap, right? So I would make these. First of all, it would be on YouTube. I'd make these major mistakes, and everybody would be calling me out and be like, I cannot believe you just stuck all those gobies together and you spent $1,000 on gobies and you're going to have one left. And I don't know if that's true or not. But
and he would just start out saying, I just wanted a pile of gobies.
Yeah, because I do.
Say.
That's what I think that's one of the most interesting things in fish keeping.
Yeah.
Is to do, and we've done that with the freshwater gobies, like the Rhinogobius henechuensis.
They're so much fun.
I had a pile of them and they just all hang out. I don't know if
grumpies.
I don't know if saltwater gobies do that. Do they make a pile like the freshwater ones do and seem not to mind each other? So,
but if we had a saltwater tank, no, I thought we always said, like going back like 20 years, we were just like, yeah, that'd be fun. Seahorses.
Oh, yeah, no, that's true. Seahorses would be cool.
Seahorses, but I would want to snuggle them.
Yeah, that is actually.
They're so
that would be something because and the other thing too is seahorses don't need a really large tank, but they're also not for beginners either. So, but I don't, and that's the other problem too is I don't do anything halfway.
No.
So it's like if I got into saltwater, I'm pretty sure it'd be like, wow, you know what? That escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand. So it'd be one of those things where you'd be like, dude, you went from no salt water to like. You just filled up a room full of saltwater tanks. You'd be like, yeah, I basically have no time anymore because I'm just doing crazy things with that. So that's why we haven't done it. It's more of a time thing. Mm-hmm. All right, let's see here. Amanda Baker. You guys stay the most on topic of the fish live streamers I've seen. And really? I love that Jason talks at a good clip. Good energy. Thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. You know what it is? I think just being a teacher, like you just train yourself to recognize that when you go off topic a lot or you're wasting time, that it's hurting your students. And so you kind of read. I've spent 14 years kind of reading my students' facial expressions and reading their body language, and I know that if I get
sleeping,
I know when you're sleeping. But if you get off topic and you're just kind of like, all right, well, let's just talk about. They zone out, and so that's just kind of how I roll, man. Samuel, thank you so much for the super chat. How often do you add new blood to the Maltese tank? Not as often as you might think. So that tank has been up and running now for probably, we've been on YouTube for 4 years, and that was up and running before then. So it's probably been 5 years at least. And I've probably maybe 3 or 4 times put Maltese in from some other source. But the thing is, once the colonies get that large, you have no idea like what came from where, because there are times in that Maltese tank where I've had 300 Maltese, and it's like, okay, I have no idea where if the Maltese came from this person or that person, because they all mix together, and then we're pulling Maltese out, right? So when they breed, it's like we go to the swaps and the auctions, like, okay, let's pull 40 Maltese out of there, and let's go ahead and bring them to an auction or bring them to a swap. So it gets really difficult. You can try to, probably the best way to do that if it was something that you wanted to do to try to control the inbreeding a little bit it would be one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm going to take, if I've got 100 multis in a tank, let's say it's a 55 or 33 long, I'm going to take, they really start breeding like crazy. Maybe it doesn't have to be that many. Maybe it's 40, 30. I take those out. I bring them somewhere where I'm going to sell them. And then I go back, and you really have to figure out, okay, am I getting multis from somebody who basically got them from the person I got them from, but maybe like a year ago? So that's the other thing too, is you'd probably want to travel somewhere or order them online and be like, okay, now I want to, if I took a 25% of my multis out of the tank, go somewhere and be like, okay, now I want to add in maybe 10 or 15 and try to get that mix going. So that's probably the way, if you're really going to do that, that's probably the way to do it. All right, Brad asks, purple dragon guppies okay with cherry? Is that what you were looking at?
Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
We're thinking. We're thinking like together. Purple dragon guppies okay with cherry shrimp? Guppies with shrimp. I think that's the age-old debate. It's one of the hottest topics in all of fish keeping. It's probably not. No doubt the guppies will eat fry. So it depends on what your goals are. Do you want to breed the cherry shrimp? Do you want to put the cherry shrimp in your tank and watch them proliferate and have lots more little children? If you do, then the guppies will probably eat the shrimplets. Not probably, they will. If they see them, they're going to eat them, because shrimplets are extremely tiny and they will definitely enjoy the snack. If it's one of those things where it's like, you know what, I just kind of want to buy a dozen cherry shrimp, full-size adults, have some guppies, but I'm going to give the cherry shrimp a place where maybe they've got some Java moss, or maybe it's a heavily planted tank and they've got some places to go. Could that potentially work? Maybe. But I generally don't trust a lot of fish unless they're really small, like maybe the celestial pearl Daniel size. Heteroandra formosa is fine, which is a fleur-de-lis killie, which gets like less than an inch. That works. What else would work? I mean, they got to be small. Even endlers. I don't trust endlers around shrimp because they're more nippy even than guppies, more active, more crazy. I'm not saying they're going to chow down on an adult guppy or an adult shrimp because they're basically the same size, but
little babies.
Yeah, so you could try it. You might find out it works. You probably won't see any babies. Miguel, thank you so much for the sticker. Love the little dude.
See,
the little looking dude.
One.
Now, is that a bird? No, that's also
a pear.
It's a blue pear. I love it. Or as I like to say, it's a peach.
Well, no. Somebody, I forget who. Wait, one of my peeps here said you were confused because of the video today when I messed up. I was trying to say something. I said peach.
Oh yeah, you did say that. Yeah, I don't remember what you're.
Take that crap out.
No, I'm leaving that in. That's like my little paybacks. Like I remember last night when you yelled at me for not putting the dishes away. All right,
it's going in. The peach is going in.
Yeah, when you misspoke, that bad boy is going to be all over the internet. It's my little way of saying thank you.
Grapes. Oh wait, yeah.
What?
I think Finn Wiggles said, "What's favorite fruits around here?"
Our home?
Clint has already answered. Grapes.
Grapes are good.
But Clint, which grapes? The red ones or the green ones?
Ooh. Yeah,
there's no discussion there. Go ahead and put your own.
I think there's plenty of discussion there.
You picked the wrong one.
The green ones, man. They're just so boom, they burst in your mouth.
No, they're like
I'm an average dude, man. I like bananas because they come in their own little container. And they're perfectly okay in their own self-container. And then you crack open the container, you eat the thing.
No, it's like an orange.
No, because oranges are too juicy and they splatter everywhere. And then your hands are all sticky. And I don't have any nails. So then I got to take something sharp like a fork or something to kind of get the thing started.
Really weird. You don't have to do that. You can just use like a knife. Cut around the outside, bam.
No.
Yes.
Anyway, Filigree Aquatics says pseudomogils don't bother shrimp. That's cool. That's a good option. Good to know. M&C Aquatics says lots of babies. That's true.
Lots of babies.
We got lots of babies going everywhere in the fish room these days.
Yep.
All right. Let's see here. Moving on down. Trying to find. Oh, we got some votes for the grapes here.
Muscat grapes. Did you ever get the little tiny ones? Those are good. Those are so fun because they're tiny.
I bet they are.
Oh yeah, and Michael Phillips. Hey, Michael. The darker the grape, the healthier. Yeah, more color, right?
Okay. Here, Nate's got a great question. Hey guys, closing on my new house on Friday. Congratulations.
Oh,
That is
congrats.
awesome. I remember back in the day how exciting that was. It's so weird. You're like, huh. I've got this new place I'm living in. It's
Yeah.
got new noises, like new little creaks, like creakle things in the floor or the wall or something, and new outside noises, all fun. And finally have enough room to get a big tank. I'd like to keep fish as big as Oscars and explore new fish size, and weight isn't an issue. What size to grow? To grow? If you're going to go big, and especially if you're looking at Oscars and you want to keep multiple larger fish, I really like the 180, just because you're getting that 24 inches in depth, where the 125 is only 18 and a half. And so the issues that I've had with, like, let's say the 125, you'd have the same issue with a 150. So the 125 and the 150, those are both 6-foot tanks. I'm not a huge fan of the 150s because they're tall. I mean, those bad boys are tall. But the 18 and a half inches of depth, it's like, even when you've got a 13-inch fish, let's say, and so let's say you've got some larger Oscars that are 12 or 13 inches, or you're like, oh, I want to get some tinfoil barbs, or I don't know, Midas cichlids. Those bad boys get really big, and all of a sudden, it's just kind of the way it looks visually when they're trying to turn around, and maybe you've got some driftwood or some fake or real plants, probably not real plants with South and Central American cichlids, but there's just something about that 24 and a half inch width when you've got that 6-foot length that really makes it visually appealing, and it's going to give you more options than a 125. So if it were me and I were keeping those types of fish, I would want to go a 180. I think it's not cheap, but I think it's worth it long term, especially if you're talking about, hey, in 10 years I'm still going to have this tank. For me, I would say it's worth it. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion on the matter. All right, let's see here. Scrolling on down. Oh, thank you so much, Ashley, for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Mm-hmm. Have you ever tried to save freeze baby brine shrimp? If so, how did you do it? I like feeding my Maltese baby brine, but I don't have enough to eat a whole batch of baby brine shrimp in a day. Thanks and love you too. Thank you so much. You can put live baby brine in the fridge. Freezing it, I don't think that's going to probably help you that much, because once you freeze it, they're most likely going to, what's going to happen is any water that's even associated with their bodies is going to crystallize, and then it's going to expand once you freeze it, and they're definitely going to die. The refrigerator will usually slow them down enough, at least for, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 hours, where once you put them back in the tank, they might still be moving. They will not have grown anymore. So the big thing with live baby brine shrimp is you get this sweet spot where it's like, okay, you put the eggs in and you wait roughly 18 to 24 hours, they hatch. And because they haven't used a lot of their nutrients that are part of their body and were part of the egg, they still have some nutritional value. The problem is, once you start getting into, like, okay, 36 hours, let's say, at hatching temperatures, they start to use a lot of those nutrients to grow, and what's left isn't as nutritious. And so putting them in the fridge can kind of slow that process down. Now, I don't necessarily know if I'd go 10 or 12 hours. I suppose you can. People do it. But maybe if I fed them in the morning and I was going to put the rest in the refrigerator, I might wait 8 hours and then put the rest in, and then just watch, right? Just watch and say, okay, I did it. Maybe you start at 6 hours and you say, okay, I added it to the tank, and sure enough, they look like they were moving, and you'll see them kind of jittering. Okay, cool. Then maybe you stretch it out to 8 hours. Are they still moving around? Cool. But and you just kind of have to look at it that way, and it will slow. The refrigerator will definitely slow their growth, so they still have some nutritional value later. So hopefully that helps. The other thing that you can do as well is, I know the directions give you, like for us, generally what we do, and it might not flow exactly with the directions that you have for your live baby brine, but we'll take a 1 liter bottle. So if I have like a DIY system, and we could take a 1 liter bottle, and I know if I fill that up most of the way, I basically cut off the bottom. I have a video on how to do it, but so I fill it most of the way up. I put in 2 tablespoons of salt and just 1 teaspoon more or less of brine shrimp, and that gives us good hatch rates. But there's nothing to say that I can't do, okay, let me go ahead and do a 1/2 liter. and put in 1 scoop of salt and maybe a half a teaspoon of brine shrimp and just have a little bit less. So you could do that as well. And then maybe you do that twice a day instead of just doing it once. So that's an option too. All right. Let's see here.
Oh, wait.
Wait, what?
Hold on, let me read this first so I don't mess it up. Okay. Nikki, are you watching? Assumably your last name is Newbie. You're getting a shirt in the mail from your hubby. Congratulations. And thank you, Philip.
Wait, were you supposed to say that?
Yeah. That's why I had to read it.
Okay.
It's a surprise.
Oh, it's a surprise. Wow.
Yeah.
So we were part of the surprise?
Yeah.
We got to deliver the surprise?
Philip said,
Wow.
Joanna, I ordered my wife the Scape Gaze Repeat shirt as a surprise. She's sitting next to me on the couch. Could you let her know? Her name is Nikki.
That's
Congratulations, you're getting a shirt.
That's really cool. Well, thank you so much for
Yay.
sporting the gear. Yay. So I saw, and the reason why we just got significantly brighter is because I am currently looking for, someone mentioned Aquashella in the chat. And when is Orlando? So Orlando is in June. And I think, Clint, I believe you're right. Yeah, so it's the 12th and the 13th.
The 12th and 13th?
12th, yeah, the 12th and
what you said 12th and 13th.
Yeah, I said whatever I says. So I says 12th and 13th. Yeah, it's the 12th and the 13th in Orlando, and we have every intention of being there. We're just starting to, I think this week we're going to kind of get our plans together and do all that stuff. And I think it's going to be awesome. And if you've never been to an Aquashella, I highly recommend it. I mean, it's cool. It's a lot of fun. And we've mentioned this before, just to be around people that have the similar interests and the similar hobbies. Because let's face it, it's not like fish keeping is one of those things where it's an awesome hobby, but it's not like you're going to walk out your door and find 50 other people that live on your block that all are fish keepers too, unless you live on the coolest block in America. But so that's why these things are awesome, because you're just surrounded by people who like to do and keep fish and like to do the same things you do. And I'm looking forward to it because I get to see people that I haven't seen. And now it's hard to believe, but it's been, when was the last Aquashella? Would that have been the Chicago one?
Yeah, probably just about 2 years ago, right?
I can't remember when, at this point, like 2019. Yeah, because I think Dallas was in the spring that year.
I didn't go.
And then Aquashella Chicago was the summer of 2019. And it's so much fun. It's fun to see, other channels and stuff and hang out. And it's fun to just see the people. And then what's really cool for us is we get to match the faces with the names that we see. Like people come up and be like, oh, I'm Clint, or oh, I'm Lav Snails, or oh, I'm this person. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like I see your name all the time. And now we actually get to kind of hang out and talk for a little while. So it's a lot of fun. It's cool because you get to walk around and there's vendors there, and there's fish tank displays, and there's competitions, and there's like aquascaping competitions. There's keynote speakers, and Aquashella is cool because they know how to kind of like entertain. So they got the really awesome displays, and it's a lot of fun
stuff.
So if you ever have a chance, and this year right now the plans are June is Orlando. August. Right now Chicago is in August, and then we mentioned before that Dallas is on Halloween weekend, so that would be the end of October this year. So they're kind of spread out throughout America. There's people who come from all over the place, and I know like even the YouTube creators, you'll see them from Germany, from Australia, from all over the United States. Obviously like someone like Joey's from Canada, and it's really cool. So hopefully there will be a really big turnout. I think that there is a lot of people who are like, yeah, you know what? I would really like to get to one of these things. So I'm hoping that it'll just be a nice, fun time for all of us to hang out and be the fish nerds that we are and embrace it and feel like that's just like a totally normal thing. Gerald says, I live in Orlando area and bought my VIP tickets and can't wait. It is my first Aquashella. Yeah, so the VIP thing. Now, here's some things you should know about some behind the scenes things you should know about Aquashella. I don't think I'll get in any trouble for this because it's not really whatever. But one, the VIP tickets can be nice, at least from past experience, because the lines, like I remember the first one in Dallas, I don't think anybody expected the number of people
Yeah, that was crazy.
that went to Dallas. Like they sent us out there to just kind of like hang out with people, and the line was, it had to be a quarter mile long to get in, and they were at max capacity. So it's kind of nice. And I don't know if that will happen in Orlando. And they are really fairly well organized, and they've been through it a few times now. But the VIP tickets are nice because you get in a little bit earlier, and of course, then I think you get. And I don't want to say things that maybe aren't true, but usually you get in a little bit earlier on at least one of the days, and usually those VIP passes are good for the entire day, sometimes for the entire weekend. So it's definitely. It's something to look at. It's definitely something to investigate. Let's see here. But yeah, Aquashella, I am super looking forward to that. Zach, thank you so much for the super chat, man. Appreciate it. Hey guys, any recommendations on plants that would do well with Geophagus? My geos are destroying some of the new beautiful plants I've spawned. Yeah.
Yeah, fake plants do really well.
I don't really think that's what he's interested in here. So
I know.
Plants for Geophagus. There's a few things you can do. One, you could consider anything that might float. And so that would be things like hornwort, but it's like, all right, the hornwort just stays at the top. It's not really the planted look I'm looking for. Water sprite, water wisteria. Both of those tend to be plants where they get these little tiny roots. And in theory, a lot of times when you see them, it's like, oh, these are planted in the substrate. But in reality, what they often tend to do is kind of float, but they float upright. Unlike if you threw crypts in there and tried to float them, sometimes they go upside down, or Anubias. But water sprite and water wisteria, they're smart. They're the smartest plants out there.
Really?
Because when they start to float, they're like, you know what? I know up from down, and I know when I'm upside down, and I'm not going to have that. Meanwhile, they're looking at the crypts and they're like, dude, do you realize that your roots are pointing up? And the Anubias is like, yeah, but I can't help it. But the water sprite and water wisteria, often they'll kind of float towards the top. And then as they grow, as they fill out, they kind of push themselves down towards the bottom, but never fully root, at least not in my experience. So those might be something to consider with Geophagus. The other thing that you could potentially consider is, I know like Aquarium Co-op, they sell these, they're almost, I don't know if they're not really ceramic, but they're kind of like, they're rock looking, and they're actually really cool looking. And they're planter things. Yeah, I don't know what they call them, but they're basically like a rock structure looking thing that's hollow, and then you can plant the plants in there and then set them on the substrate, and it looks kind of natural. So that's another thing to consider. But yeah, the Geophagus are tough because they like to dig and to do, spit sand everywhere, and that can be a little rough. But yeah, those are some potential options. Zach, same Zach. Thank you so much for the other super chat. Appreciate it. All right, let's see here. Let's do like a few more questions, huh? Like a couple two tree more, and then we'll call it a night and let you guys get to your.
Oh, here. Finn Wiggles wants to know if I've ever kept the emerald dwarf rasboras in my tiny tanks. No. Why have I never had them before?
I don't know, but that's something that we should probably put on your list of fish to get. They're really cool. Yeah. I like them. They stay small, too. Which is cool.
Yeah, I wonder why I haven't gotten them yet.
Easy planter. Thank you, Amanda. That's what the thing is called. The thing I was talking about, the rock thing with the hole in it where you put the plants, the plant thing, is called the Easy Planter. aquariumcoop.com. They have it. And it's a pretty cool little invention, I think. Let's see here. Connor said, can you please do a betta breeding episode? Someday, but I think if you're looking for betta breeding, then someone like Creative Pet Keeping would probably be a channel. She did an entire series on that, and she's got a lot of experience. So I think if we did it, we would be doing it as more or less beginners, because that's just how we don't have a lot of experience breeding bettas. But if you want somebody who's got a little bit more experience, Creative Pet Keeping is probably just kind of search for Creative Pet Keeping betta breeding series, and she's got a pretty good one for sure. Let's see here.
Luby's Planet said duckweed equals curse. Got that right. Unless you really love duckweed.
Duckweed's okay. It's good to feed to some fish. Here we go. Truth Will Out. Thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. All right, well, let's do one more. One more for good measure here. If somebody's got a question, and then we'll call it a night. Because we got to please help. So I'm glad I saw this. Please help. Sunny Delight. Hi, please help. My fish just died, red-eyed tetra. I noticed its belly had red streaks, perhaps internal bleeding or something else. I'm new to the hobby and would like to gain as much knowledge as possible. Red stripes, red streaks in the belly. So sometimes it can be hard from a description to really know what's going on. I guess the first thing would be, are any of your other fish showing signs of illness? If they're not, then it might be confined to that one fish. Usually if it's a belly thing, often it's an internal parasite. And so the red stripes might be just due to some swelling. So maybe if the abdomen, especially if the abdomen was a little bit swollen, that could lead to that, which usually means, okay, did it have some type of internal parasite? Was it eating before it started to show those signs? Because that can help us determine what was going on. It's like, okay, it was fine, then it stopped eating, then I saw these red stripes and it died. That would lead to more internal stuff. Did it, if it was more external, it could have scratched itself. It could have been an infection from the outside, from the epithelial tissue. But my first thought is, just based on your description, that maybe it was something internal. And then just keep an eye on the rest of your fish. Make sure they're eating as well. That would be my advice. All right. I think we're going to call it a night, everybody. What do you think?
Sure.
And we really appreciate being here again. Thank you to all the moderators, Mary Page and Clint, for all the stuff that you did tonight, and for all the super chats. Really appreciate your support. That money goes right back into the fish room. So that's what when we do our product reviews and we do the things like that, we reinvest a lot of that money back to get the products so that we can do the reviews and that kind of thing and keep the fish room up and running. So really appreciate it. We will see you next week, hopefully. Ricardo, thank you so much, by the way, for becoming a primetime partner. Look forward to having you as part of the group. And we will see you next week. Have a wonderful night.